Okay, now I'm going to show you how to make an enemy inside Unreal. This is going to be pretty simple to start off with. We're just going to get the enemy kind of in there, walking side to side, so whenever it hits one of the tiles that I've set up here on the right or left, it will move in the other direction. So again, it's going to be a pretty simple enemy. Later on, like, we could add in such things as hitboxes, and maybe, you know, if it comes down ledge, you can decide if it can fall off the ledge or if it will turn back, that type of thing. So the first thing that we're going to do is make a folder called enemies. I've just colored mine red. Then I'm going to right click in here, add a blueprint class, and it's going to be a character. Okay, and it's going to call this enemy. Open that up. Now there's a few things that are inherited from this class, so a few things that we can't, well, everything in here that we can't get rid of. It's asking for a mesh, but we don't have to use that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add component, and we're going to type in flipbook, and we're going to have our sprite in here instead. I'm just going to call that sprite. I'm going to use our character sprite just because I'm cheap. So if we use the run one, you can see our characters run now. So to kind of differentiate it between this here and our character, I'm going to click, if you look down here, we got sprite color. I'm going to just change it to a red, or you could change it to a green or something like that. I'll probably just go for a red. Again, with the capsule, we're going to have to change the radius and the height of that. And that's that part done. So into our event graph, we're going to make two variables. Okay, we're going to make one called direction. That's going to be an integer, so that's a whole number. And we're either going to have -1 or 1 for that whole number. And then we're also going to choose speed. And that's going to be a float, and we're going to make that public, so if we want, we can change it in the editor itself. So that's the first two things that we're going to get set up. Now we're going to add in a kind of separate function in a bit, but for now what we're going to add in is basically the speed of the character moving left or right. So that's going to work from the update node, which is the event tick, and that is going to go into a set relative rotation, because we want to know if our character is turning right or turning left. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the capsule component, bring that in, and we're going to bring that out and just type in rotation. And we've got set relative rotation down there. We're going to leave this at 0, but what we are going to do is add in an add movement input. And our speed, so we're going to get our speed. I'm going to set our default speed, so if I select it here, I'll set our default speed to 3.5. Might have to change that. And our world direction is 1. What we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste that. And this is for going back the other way, so this is going to be -1, and the rotation in the Z is going to be 180, so we just want to change our capsule around. We're going to leave that there for a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a function. Okay, so this is it's kind of like a custom event, only it sits in its own tab. So we're going to make that down here, so function, and we're going to call this direction, and then we'll just call it func for function. And in our event graph, so every time we update, we're going to call on this direction function. Okay, and basically when it calls on that, it's going to change this integer direction to -1 or 1. So what we want to do is have a branch, and basically what we'll do is we're going to get a direction, and we're going to say, is this equal to, okay, so is this integer equal to 1? If it's true, it's going to move to the right. If it's false, it's going to move to the left. So into the direction function, what we're going to do is we're going to get a capsule, and we're going to get its world location. So wherever it is in the world. So get world location. We're also going to get its forward vector. So this is kind of like its direction. You can have like different types of vectors. So if I pull out from this, you can see you can get your right vector, up vector, or forward vector. So what we're going to do with this function in these two locations is basically draw a line from its central location and point it out forward in this vector, and we're going to create what's called a line trace. So if I right click and type line trace, what we want to use is line trace by channel. So the start of that is going to be the center of our capsule component, and the end of that is going to be in the direction of this forward vector. Okay, and we want to multiply that by a float. I'm going to multiply by, say, 20 units, so it's going to stick out 20 units in this direction, and then we're going to add it to this value. Okay, so it's vector plus vector, and that's going to go into the end. So every time this does it, it's going to draw this line out. It's going to be invisible, but if we use draw debug type, we can go for duration, and then it will draw that line out every frame, or every time it's updated. Then we got out this out hit, okay, which contains a load of different values. So if I right click this and split the struct pin, you'll see that it's got all these values, such as, like, you know, the time that it hit, location, impact point, normal. Just means like if you're firing a gun, like you could have sparks coming off in that location, or it would put a decal up, such as a bullet hole or something like that. But what we want to do is just check if it was hit, okay? So if that actual ray or that line that we sent out, did it actually hit anything? And if it did, then we're going to make a change of direction. So our direction's here. We're going to make sure that's set to 1 as default. What we're going to say is, was this hit? So we're going to have a branch, okay? And the condition for this, if it's going to be true or false, is the out hit blocking hit. Okay, so if that's true, we're going to get our direction, and we're going to set it. So our direction is going to be multiplied integer by integer by -1. So this means that it's always going to end up either 1 or -1. So if it's 1 to start off with, and you multiply by -1, it'll end up as -1. So then when it comes around again, and this is -1, and it's multiplied by -1, it'll end up as 1. So if that's true, plug that in there, that in there. And if we got out their event graph, you can see what's going to happen here. So every frame it's going to update. It's going to call in this function, which is going to draw a line out, and if it hits anything, it's going to change the direction variable to 1 or -1. This event tick is going to then check for the value of that direction. If that's 1, it's going to go to the right at this speed, and if it's false, so if it's -1, it's going to go in the opposite direction, again using this speed. So let's compile and save that, and let's bring our enemy out, make sure it's on 0 on the Y plane, and we'll press play. So a few things, speed is very high, so I might just change that to 1.5, save that, press play. It's still incredibly high. Oh, actually, you know what? By default, I'll make it 0.5. And here, I'll make it 0.5 as well. So save that, press play. And it's not hitting anything yet. So it must be a problem. Just checking if these are in the same plane. And what I can do is just to see if it is working, I'm going to play it and select a viewport. And it's just going to the right. If I go into my direction here, it's saying that it's not hitting anything. Okay. So there might be something wrong with that. Okay, so the problem was it just wasn't going far enough, so I just upped this to 30. And if we play this in the selected viewport, sorry, if we play it in a new editor window, you can see the character is moving left to right. The one problem is it'll run into your character and it will just stay there. So there's a few things that we're going to have to change with the collision detection on the capsule component and our sprite. So if I select my sprite and I go down to collisions, you can see that there's collisions preset and it's set up to block all. So no matter what it comes into contact with, it's going to block all. So what we want to just change that to is custom, and we're just going to make it ignore all. Okay. Then we're going to go to the capsule component and we're going to do something similar. We're going to change that to custom, ignore all except for world static, which it's going to block. Okay. And the trace as well is also going to block those. So if I compile and save that, it should walk through the character, but also go left and right. So one of the problems that we'll run into when we press play with multiple characters or enemies in our scene is that they'll start to bump into each other. So by default, again, the collision boxes or collision capsule and the sprites in these enemy blueprints are set to collide with the ray traces. So what we want to do is go into the enemy blueprint, into the capsule component, and in the details panel under collision, again the same as our player character, we want to change that to custom, and under trace responses we want to select visibility and camera, make sure they're both ignored. And we want to do that with this sprite component as well, so set that to custom, and then visibility, camera, ignore. Compile and save that, press play, and your enemies should no longer bump into each other.